Hi, Graham.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Hi, Dee.
Hi, everyone. How are you?
I'm
Good.
fine.
How are you?
Morning.
Great.
If you hear drilling, I'll put this on mute, but if you hear drilling, we've got somebody reinstalling a microwave in the above my head.
We've
Yeah,
all got noises in our background.
absolutely. If you hear a screaming baby, you'll know where that's coming from my house.
We heard it. We heard her in the practice meeting.
She's not
Uh,
screaming, she's fussing.
She was fussing. Yes, I know. There's a difference.
She just went down for her nap, so hopefully she lasts.
When I get the shout, I may well have to go up and just hold the end of the microwave while he's on the brush.
Now, Michelle, what organization are you from?
I am from the Safer Coalition under the
Who is-
Substance Awareness Center.
Okay, great.
Then
And
the
then
other
The
cell.
other Michelle.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
I'm with Milestones Developmental Center for Autism.
Great. Nice to meet you.
You too. Hi.
I'm Dee Locke. I'm with Impact 100. I know Graham and
You know me.
yep. So Liz is my mother-in-law.
So she does know her.
Yes. We've met before.
Yes. So we're just gonna give it, I'm gonna put a little message up on the screen and we'll just wait a few minutes, probably until about 2 minutes after 9 to start the meeting, okay? Feel free to mute yourselves or continue chatting, but we can welcome people as they join. I'm just gonna put this up.
I'm going to mute so that the noise of the drilling will not screw things up here.
Thanks, Graham. Hmm. Mary Ellen, did you want to do a quick round of introductions before we begin?
Sure. So, as far as I'll introduce.
I wanted to, as far as the
Yeah.
attendees. Or Liz.
Yeah, I'm wondering. Oh, the attendees that are on right now.
Mhm.
Will we be able to see all of them? Hang on.
Yeah, I don't know that we can see all of them, but I can go, I can scroll through. There's Peggy McCord. Okay.
I mean, I can do it quickly at the beginning of the meeting. Just ask everybody to introduce themselves.
Oh, okay. I think that's better, don't you? Just say their name and the organization they're with.
Yeah, okay.
Would be really helpful. I meant to ask you for a list and I forgot.
I forwarded the link to my colleague. Is it okay if she joins or is it a special link?
Nope, it's absolutely fine if she joins.
Okay, awesome.
It's to everyone's advantage.
Okay, great.
That's my attitude about it. Who do we have? Nancy McCurry. I gotta use my glasses. And Vicky Penley, hi, how are you? Oh, you're mute. That's all right. Don't worry about it. Peggy McCord. Okay. Linda Scott. Dee, are you able to unmute everybody or do they have to unmute themselves?
I can ask everybody to unmute.
Okay.
Do you guys see a black box on your screen,
Black box.
like over
Okay.
the image?
No.
I don't. Nope.
Great.
Is that a good thing?
Yeah.
Good.
Lynn Burns is joining us.
Hello, I'm having issues with my,
Video.
for some reason, my privacy setting was changed, probably after the last update. Hang on. So I don't have camera on right now, just a
Okay.
minute.
Wonder if there's a way. Oh. Down on, can
Yes.
you get down on your stop video?
I have to,
I can ask to start video and see if a little box pops up, Lynn.
no, it's, my privacy setting was changed for Zoom. I didn't change it,
Oh,
but I have to go in now and find it. Let's see. Odd. Okay. Okay. Oh my God, this is insane.
Hi, Jean Shepherd.
Oh, hello. Hi. How are you?
Well, how are you?
Good. I'm telling you, I'm so grateful that we're all vaccinated. I can see people in person, but I'm glad to see you as a thumbnail.
At least something, right? We're alive and well.
Yes.
Ugh.
Mary Ellen, is Suzanne on the call? I'm not seeing her yet.
Not seeing her either.
Okay.
She did say she was joining. I can do what she was going to do if she doesn't.
Okay. No worries. We'll wait another minute and then we'll get started. I'm going to keep everybody.
Can you all see me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hi, Lynn.
Hello, Dee. How are you?
Great.
So did you not make me show them?
Yeah, you're not video missing.
All right, so I think we're going to get started here in the interest of time. I don't want to keep you all waiting. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. We would like to just do a quick round of introductions. So if you could unmute yourselves and I'll call out your name. That way everybody knows who. And if you could just say what organization you're from and what your position there is, and say a quick hello to everybody in the room. So Graham isn't there, it looks like. Peggy McCord.
Hello, everybody. I'm Peggy McCord, and I'm the Development Coordinator with Life Builders of the Treasure Coast. It's good to see you all.
All right, Nancy McCurry.
Hi, I'm Nancy McCurry with Economic Opportunities Council, Head Start.
And Vicki Penley.
Yes,
Oh, you're on mute, Vicki. All right.
Okay. Hi, I'm Vicki Pinley from Special Equestrians, and I'm a grant writer.
Perfect. Michelle DeShane. Did I pronounce that right? Perfect.
Hi, my name is Michelle DeShane, and I am the Interim Foundation Director for the VNA and Hospice Foundation.
Great. And Michelle Pernice?
Yes. Hi, I'm Michelle Pernice with Milestones Developmental Center for Autism, and I'm the Program Director and President of the organization.
All right. And Phyllis Schneider.
Yes, I work at the Substance Abuse Free Indian River County. It's the Safer Coalition, it's a community coalition here in town, and I am the coalition coordinator.
Great. And Jean Shepherd.
Hi, I'm Jean Shepherd. I'm the Executive Clinical Director for the Mental Health Association in Indian River County. Good morning, everyone.
Lynn Burns.
Good morning, everyone. I'm retired, having worked at PepsiCo for many years, and I'm on the Impact 100 committee for. I'm a panel chair for grant writing.
Karen Johnson.
Good morning. I'm Karen Johnson from Special Equestrians. We teach therapeutic riding to special needs children and adults in Vero Beach.
And Robin Thoreau.
Yeah. Yeah. Hi, I'm Robin. I work for The Source, and I am their grant writer.
Great. Linda Scott.
I'm coordinator for Gifford Youth Orchestra, and I'm here to,
Great. And Angelia.
Hi, I'm Angelia Perry, the Executive Director of the Gifford Youth Achievement Center.
Great. Carolyn Thornton Nelson.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Carolyn Nelson, and I'm the Executive Director for Friends After Diagnosis, a local cancer support organization here in Indian River County.
Perfect. Michelle Boudreau.
I am Michelle Buldo, Director of the Safer Coalition under the Substance Awareness Center.
All right. Christiana Brady.
Hi, I'm Anna Brady. I work with FAU Harbor Branch as the Development Coordinator.
And Sherry Watkins. Sherry? All right, Mo O'Brien.
Good morning. My name is Mo O'Brien. I am a member of Impact 100. I am really looking forward to getting a better feel to how best to interpret the responses for grants so that we really take it to the next level next year.
Great. Quentin Walter. Okay, and Graham Cox.
Good morning. I'm a volunteer with Pelican Island Audubon Society, and by default, I help them write grants. Pelican Island Audubon runs an after-school education program, science education program for fifth graders from South County schools, as well as Pelican Island Elementary.
All right, wonderful. And I'm Dee Locke. I'm the Director of Operations here at Impact. I'm going to introduce to you Mary Ellen McCarthy. She is this year's Grants Chair. She's also the President-elect, so she will be President next grant cycle. She's been with Impact for a very long time. Many of you know her from visioning sessions. She chaired visioning for several years. And she's just going to go over some basics in regards to the grants timeline, the grants process.
Good morning, everyone. I am so happy to be here and to see all of you in attendance. I know you will learn a lot this morning. I just wanted to give you kind of a general overview. We've changed a few of the dates that we have for deadlines. The first is we have already downloaded our application onto Submittable this year. As of today, or as of actually the beginning of the week, we have the application available to you to look at. You log into Impact's network website, sorry, and you create yourself an account. And then you can, the first thing you want to do is download our grant guidelines because they are slightly different than last year. And then you can go through them, and that is your first step to writing yourself a grant to submit to us. Beyond that, you have the ability to have people on your team access the grant application, anyone that you would like to have as a part of your writing of the grants. And throughout the season until the deadline of handing in the grant, which is this year, November 3rd, you have the opportunity to, number one, meet with our visioning committee, and I'll talk about that in a couple minutes. And then you have the chance to spend the months ahead organizing, writing, perfecting, and that's something that our moderator today is going to tell you a lot more about, your grant application. So the applications, as I just said, are due November 3rd, and today is June 15th. So we have a little span of time that seems like a lot at the moment. It'll go by awfully fast if you have a deadline for something this impactful. Once you have your grant submitted, I'm going to fast forward to our grant panels, which will receive some of our grant. Each panel will receive 2 or 3 grants, and they will be in charge of, I'm sorry? Oh, they will be in charge of evaluating the grants. And so each panel has a chair, and the chair will be calling the executive directors of the various organizations that have applied and set up site visits. Those take place January to February. And then once the grant panels have evaluated their grants and we have accumulated a list of finalists, we notify those finalists on March 2nd. And we have a meet the finalist presentation to our membership on March 3rd. At that point, our membership studies up on what you have as an organization, what you have, sorry, I don't have any notes in front of me, so I'm just kind of pulling out words out of the top of my head, but your presentation of your grant project. And that's a very important piece of your application to us. You have to actually tell us the story of what it is that the project will accomplish, and in a way that makes it, it makes our membership want to vote for it. So that's in a nutshell what the schedule is for you as a grant applicant. Now, the visioning committee, which is what I was head of for the last 5 years, is a group of women that will meet with you. They have experience in grant evaluation, but they are not part of the grants process as far as evaluating anymore. What they do is they are there for you to give advice as to what it is. We listen to what you have to say about your grant, what your project is, and we give you advice on how to frame it. Oftentimes, it seems so good for you to put it in a way that works for your actual work, and we can make it framed for our membership so that we are helping you present it in the best possible light. And that's really important for you to be successful. Keep in mind, there are over 400 members in Impact. We all want you to be successful. And I think that's the most important thing that you can learn from us today, is that we really care about what we do. We really have a lot of passion for our community, and you are the reason that our community is as good as it is, when we want to help you make it even better. So with that, I'd like to introduce Liz Locke, and she will be presenting today.
Thank you. Good morning. As Mary Ellen said, my name is Liz Locke, and I just want to tell you a little bit about my background and why I'm presenting here today. I am a librarian by profession, but I've been involved in the grants world since the mid-90s. First grant proposal that I had a very small part in was when I was an intern at the University of Miami. They applied for an American Memory Project grant for about $650,000. And we got the grant, and I thought, this is so easy. You just apply and they give you money. So I quickly found out that that isn't always the way it works, but I was hooked. So one of my first jobs as a librarian was managing a nonprofit resource center down in Palm Beach County, which was also a funding information network partner of what was then the Foundation Center and is now Candid. I did that for a few years, and then I went off on my own. I was working as a nonprofit consultant, and then finally ended my career with the Palm Beach County Library System, and retired last year. Over the course of those years, I was able to take some training in proposal writing through the Foundation Center. They have a proposal writing boot camp. The Grantsmanship Center has a great 5-day program, or it was 5 days then. So I encourage you to look into those things if you're not an experienced grant writer. There are also a lot of free tools available to you. And as a librarian, I may throw some resources out to you. One of them is Candid's Learning website, which is just a wealth of resource. There are a lot of free webinars on there, no matter what your fundraising interests are. So anyway, I know that many of you are experienced proposal writers. Many of you have applied for impact grants in the past, and some of you have been funded. So as I go through these slides, I encourage any of you, whether you're asking questions or offering your own information, to jump in and feel free to add to what I'm saying. The other thing I do want to say is that I was a founding member of Impact 100 Palm Beach County, now celebrating its 10th anniversary, and I chaired the grants committee for a number of years there. And I'm a new resident of Indian River County as of last October, and so I'm also a new member of Impact 100, so here. So today we're going to talk about proposal writing in general, and more specifically, we will address a few of the unique things about the impact grant. We'll go ahead and start with the planning process, including who should be involved, go into the needs statement and positioning research in your proposal. We'll talk about project description, goals and outcomes, and measuring impact, sustainability, how to position information about your organization. And we will go through how to create a realistic budget and look at the impact budget form. And then finally, we will talk a little bit about what happens after the proposal is submitted, as Mary Ellen just went through the process. I'll talk a little bit about site visits. I've had a lot of really great experience with site visits and a few that didn't go so well. So we'll discuss that. And then finally, when I'm done, Deanna will go through the submittable platform. So I think we'll just go ahead and jump into the first slide that we're looking at right now. So we're going to look at proposal writing as a whole. It's part of a process that includes planning, research, writing, and follow-up. And according to the GrantStation survey done a couple of years ago, most organizations said that it probably takes them 1 to 6 months. The important thing to remember is that you will spend a lot of time and probably money putting your grant proposal together. So there are steps that you should take in order to make it as successful as possible. Your request is going to cover your credibility as a nonprofit and your ability to carry out any projects that you've laid out. When you're partnering with a funder, and particularly in Impact 100, you are partnering. You're the stewards of the money that they have raised. So keep that in mind. You're going to tailor your proposal to a funder. Mary Ellen mentioned, I think Mary Ellen mentioned the, am I getting feedback or is somebody talking? Okay. I think Mary Ellen mentioned the eligibility guidelines. Become completely familiar with the eligibility guidelines. They have changed slightly this year. If you haven't looked at them, take a look. They're available on the website. The link was available in your Zoom invitation. They're available in Submittable. So, and consider, does Impact 100 even fund the type of project that you want to implement? Do you have questions about whether or not your project is eligible? If you have a question, review the guidelines. If your question is still not answered, contact Impact 100. We, as Mary Ellen mentioned, we want to work with you. There are certain questions that come up frequently. I know in Palm Beach County, they came up pretty much every year. For example, partisan activities are not funded. Programs that are operated by fraternal, sectarian, or religious organizations where the grant is intended for the principal benefit of the organization's members or for religious, inherently religious activities, those are not funded. However, if you're a faith-based organization and your project perhaps involves an after-school program for children that doesn't have a religious component to it, then that would be considered by Impact 100. So again, read, understand the guidelines now, and decide whether or not you're eligible so you don't waste any time. Look at the organizations and programs that have been awarded in the past. And again, attend a visioning session. Impact 100 Indian River County goes above and beyond to help you. So try to avoid submitting a proposal that's focusing on your organization and consider what Indian River Impact is looking for. As you prepare your proposal, you're going to try to maintain a balance between head and heart. And when we start talking about needs, I'm going to talk a lot about data. You want to combine that factual information with stories and hopefully tug at people's heartstrings. So in terms of planning, who is going to be part of your grant team? You might involve members of the community. Something that you're doing might, you might want the input of local government leaders, your organization, Impact 100. During the planning stages, obviously, you want your executive director will be involved, any program staff, perhaps beneficiaries of what you're doing. You might want to involve clients or potential clients, possibly contractors for estimates if you're doing some sort of capital project. Finance staff is very important. You don't want to throw them any curves after the fact. Personnel staff, if you are hiring additional personnel, and board members. And so when I say board members, they may not be directly involved, but you must make sure that they're involved in, or that they're aware of what you are proposing, particularly if it's a new program or project. The worst thing that could happen is to be working on a grant proposal and have a board member out in the community hear about it from someone else and not have any clue as to what they're talking about. So when it's time to actually sit down and write the proposal, you are going to have the writer, program staff, anybody doing research, your marketing team, finance people, and reviewers, which are people who are going to look at the grant and decide whether or not it's ready to go. So I know that many of you are probably with very small organizations. And so I've named a whole bunch of people that should be involved, and perhaps all of those jobs fall to you. If that's the case, you still want to assemble a team. I mean, even if you're kind of a one-man band, then do involve your board members, do involve, other volunteers. The tip on the screen is keep all proposal related documents and information in a shared folder, just in case. This is really important. I was involved one time with someone who had a medical emergency. All the information for the grant, all the research, all the data, rough drafts were all in a folder on that person's computer, and we almost lost our minds trying to get the grant proposal in on time. So, I mean, there's so many opportunities. A lot of us are using shared platforms that are, paid platforms, but if you're using Google Docs or OneDrive, something like that, make sure that you're sharing those folders now and don't wait until the end. So I think we'll go to the next slide. Thanks. So one of the most important things to consider when you're planning is whether or not you're a credible nonprofit. And on this slide, it says it's time to prove it. And beyond being a legal nonprofit and having 501c3 status, do you have strong leadership? Okay, what's the unmet need that you want to meet? And is your organization the best one in the area to tackle the issue? Will that be obvious to a funder? You may be doing a swimming program and have a very good reason for doing a swimming program, but if you're in a community where there's a YMCA or an American Red Cross, you have to show why you are the ones to do it. What's the unmet need that you want to meet? Is the project relevant to your mission? Do you provide high quality programs that meet a real need in the community? And do you have a successful track record of effective program delivery? Do you have strong organizational and financial infrastructure? If you answered yes to those questions, then great. Will that be obvious to impact members? If not, how can you position yourself to show that you are credible? And what can you do to overcome any perceptions that you might not be able to manage a $100,000 grant? Most funders are looking for track records of significant accomplishment. So if your organization is new, maybe it's you want to step back and say, this might not be the year to do this. You might want to focus on individual donors and build up more of a reputation in the community. And one thing about that is that if you do focus on individual donors, those are donors where a grant would be time bound, might be a 1-year grant, a 2-year grant. You can't just keep going back and back and back and back. An individual donor can be cultivated to stay with you for a lifetime. But if you decide that you do want to go forward and you're a brand new organization and maybe you don't have a track record, then think about how you can position yourself as credible. So I'm going to put that out to the audience just to see if you guys have any suggestions, and then we can discuss. So if you have anything to put in the chat box, I think, Mary Ellen, are you monitoring chat? Or not?
If anybody has any questions, they can just pipe up, or any comments on that. All right.
Okay. So if you are in that category, things you might want to do are highlight staff qualifications. Perhaps you're a new organization. You could maybe you're a brand new 501c3, but maybe you have been an organization that's been around for a while and not incorporated and been doing great things in the community. You may have staff that has such incredible qualifications that, regardless of the fact that whether you've been around for 3 years or 30 years, it's almost, you just show that you are ready to do the project. Once you've identified that project, then consider the anticipated results. So if your project is implemented, who would do it? Where will it be done? Who would benefit from it? And what would those specific benefits be? So we'll jump, yeah, that's okay, you can go ahead. Okay, so proposal formats may differ. Proposal formats will differ, actually. But a grant proposal is your case for support. Most are submitted online now, unless the majority of the ones that are not submitted online are smaller family foundations. Again, we're using Submittable for Impact 100, and we'll go through that form. I would say that regardless of the format, the types of questions that funders ask are very similar. So it's important to note that some funders will not have any format at all. There are certain foundations that will just say, submit a proposal. So it's good to kind of create a boilerplate proposal answering questions that will be asked almost certainly by every funder. What specific need are you addressing? What are you trying to achieve? What's the strategy to make it happen? How are you going to measure success? Again, why are you the best organization to do the work? And then almost always there's a question about how the project will sustain itself in the long run. Do your writing offline. It's a lot easier to draft it in Microsoft Word or some other, offline program, and then pick and choose. And some online platforms do not allow you to save your work. Submittable does. So if you want, you can go in and start the application and then, close it out and come back later. Even though you're using a boilerplate, you're using a template to craft a boilerplate proposal, please do not submit it without tailoring it to an individual funder, because not all funders are the same. And when I say that, years ago, I had someone who came to a workshop. He was very proud of himself. He said that he had created the perfect proposal and that he was just sending it out to dozens of different funders. And I said, well, have you looked at what the funder wants? And he said, well, the proposal's so great, it's going to get funded. So when I say tailor your proposal to different funders, I don't mean tailor your project or tailor how you're doing your, what your strategy is to different funders, but look at what the funder funds. So an example, a program might be, say, a literacy program where you pair children and the elderly and have reading buddies. So if I'm submitting to a funder that is very interested in literacy, I would tailor it in one way. If I was specifically focused on children's literacy, tweak it slightly. Or I might submit it to a funder who's interested in elder activities and keeping the elderly sharp and having them feel needed. Then I would draft the proposal in a very different way and really point out the advantages to their population. You're not going to get an unlimited number of characters or an unlimited space to submit a proposal. So you really want to focus on how to tailor it. Anybody have any questions at this point? Okay, we will move on. Next slide, Dee. Thanks. So funders are going to want funders will want to know about your organization. There are basic elements of the proposal and things that you should have in your grant file. And a lot of these things are things that you should have right now because the information is readily available to you. For example, they're going to ask for your organization information. When I say organization information, because I've reviewed a number of grant proposals as well as written them, I've reviewed proposals where the organization information is basically, organization ABC was incorporated in 1990 and serves the Indian River County population in this way. And then I've read organization information where they really highlight their accomplishments. They offer a lot more information. So I would say take this opportunity. If you have marketing people or whoever's doing your brochures, involve them, because they know how to frame things in a way that puts you in the best light or best foot forward. So basically, organization information, name, address, contacts, number of employees or volunteers may be asked for, information about key staff members, particularly the staff members who are going to be involved in the project. You will have a list of your board of directors online, including job titles and a brief biography. Impact 100 does not require that information. They ask for a list of board of directors, but they don't ask for biographies. But you just have that information in your grants file. The other thing that you may or may not be asked is what percentage of your board of directors are donors. And this is a question that most of the proposals that I've written lately ask. And I want to kind of ask you guys why you think that's important. And what if your board of directors, what if you don't have 100% of your board of directors donating? What can you do about that? So anybody have any thoughts about that? Anybody?
I think it's just my own opinion is that it shows the strength of the organization. The more you have the commitment from board members, not only in time and effort, but also in dollars. I think that's one of the reasons that it's important.
Yeah, I think what it comes down to is, first of all, we all have boards of directors, and we know that not everyone has deep pockets. However, everybody brings different talents to the board of directors. So the problem is that if your board of directors, if you don't have 100% buy-in from directors, if you don't have 100% buy-in, if you don't have 100% of your board donating and they are not willing to donate, why would somebody from outside your organization donate? Exactly. You must give yourself first before you can ask others to give. So what do you do about that? What do you do if you are more of a startup organization? Your board of directors has a lot of talents, but they don't have a lot of money. I honestly, and you guys may think that this is ridiculous, I would say that you should try to find somebody to sponsor a donation for each of those board of directors, even if it's a small monetary amount, even if it's $25. You need to be able to answer that question in a way that makes your organization look positive. Ideally, you want to have them actually make the donation, but sometimes people just don't have the money. So anyway, those are my thoughts about that. Let's see. We talked about organization information, taking it as an opportunity to highlight what you do and your successes. Talk about your mission. So the Impact 100 proposal form also asks a very interesting question. It was on last year as well. It asks how your organization has been impacted by COVID-19. So this is really interesting and will probably tie into your financial information, things that you have put in your, that's included in your organizational budgets that you'll be submitting, because we all know 2020 was not typical in any way. Maybe you were unable to offer services at all and kind of had to operate on a shoestring and maybe lay people off, or maybe your services, the needs of the community that you serve multiplied and you went into overdrive. So again, take this as an opportunity to answer that question, to demonstrate how effectively you've operated when faced with adversity. Okay, we'll move on to the next slide. So the project description is the longest and most detailed part of your proposal. So in this section, you're going to describe exactly how you plan to address the issue you raised. That will be in the needs section, sorry, including your project goals and objectives, detailing the specific methods you'll use to implement your project. In other words, what are your specific strategies to accomplishing your goals and objectives? Hang on one sec, because I think I went ahead. Okay, so after the initial questions, most proposals will begin with the executive summary. In the case of Impact 100, there's a project summary. So a project summary is a concise description of your project. And even though it's at the beginning of your proposal, you should wait until the end to write it. So good thing you can save that impact proposal in submittable. You can skip right over project summary and do that at the end, because you're going to go ahead and write the proposal, and then you're going to extract information to put in the summary. Summary can be one of the most important parts of the proposal. It's one of the things that a funder will read first. They'll take a look at the budget and the summary, and then decide, whether or not it's something that they're excited about reading, or whether they'll table it and go back to it later. Summary will include your statement of need, a brief description, including goals and objectives, information, again, about your organization as a whole, and how much money you're asking for. The executive summary or project summary, aside from a grant proposal, is also something to keep on hand, keep handy, in case you have a visitor to your organization, or someone who reaches out to you and expresses interest. You can shoot them a copy. You may want to tweak it and make it look a little prettier, but it's just good, concise information. Following summary, the project narrative is the largest section of your proposal, and that describes your statement of need, the population that you're serving and how many, who they are and how many, and then details of the project. So this is going to be the story of your project, and that's the way it's framed in the Impact 100 proposal form. You're going to have to provide the reader with solid understanding of your project and how you're going to implement it. You're going to need a budget along with other supporting materials. So we'll talk about the statement of need, or the need that your organization has identified. Okay, so this is going to tell the reader what the problem is that you're trying to solve and why they should care. So it's not enough to simply state the problem. You have to have that supporting documentation. Make sure that your facts and statistics are relevant to your particular population. So if you are talking about substance abuse with youth, you're going to want to have data that is specific to that, not just general substance abuse information. So it's kind of a pet peeve of mine. First of all, try to keep that information as local as possible. And sometimes it is not always readily available. Please do whatever you can to get facts that are specific and current. So I mentioned I'm a librarian and I'm a little bit of a data nerd. I always make some sort of judgment, perhaps I shouldn't, when I read a proposal and the data that it cites is 15 years old. To me, it's almost, I don't know. Anyway, there are a lot of places where you can get data. So if you need help, and a little plug for libraries, if you need help getting current data, you can contact county the county, state or national agencies, or there are organizations that can help you. So I know someone mentioned that they were from the Mental Health Association of Indian River County. He used to do a lot of work with the Palm Beach County group. And I know Mental Health America that has done a lot of work with current data, particularly pandemic-related data, and as it relates to mental health. But even if you go to Mental Health America website, or you contact, you get on, sorry, I'm getting a little tongue-tied here. If you go and look for data and you don't see what you need, pick up the telephone. People are there to help you. If you don't find what you're looking for, your library is there to help you. If you go to the public library, public librarians are dying. They are trained to do research, and most research reference staff that I worked with, they don't want to answer questions about how to get to the bathroom or how to unjam the copier. They want to do research. Indian River State College is part of the statewide Ask a Librarian service. It's online. It is available certain hours only, but ask them the question. They have access through Ask a Librarian to all kinds of academic type databases, because they have access to the statewide university system databases. So anyway, that's enough, but anyway, you can tell I'm passionate about it. The other thing is, no matter how, one more thing about research, if you're not finding anything you need, or you really want to grind it down to local data, you can conduct your own research. You're probably not going to have time to do that between now and November 3rd, the impact deadline. But if you prepare for next year, you can, through surveys, through looking at demographics, you can create your own research. So one thing about the need, no matter how serious the problem is, don't paint such a grim picture that the situation seems hopeless, no matter how much money you have available. So you don't want to paint such a sad picture that a funder will say, well, you know, clearly $100,000 is not going to do anything to solve that problem. I stress the importance of facts and data, but when you are drafting your statement of need, or the need section of your proposal, you want to also tell a story about the needs of the individual. So basically, when I first started writing grant proposals, someone said, give them the facts and an understanding of your project, and then be prepared with a box of tissues to wipe away the tears. So that's what you want. You want someone to really feel what you're feeling. We'll jump on to the next slide. Okay, and I will too. All right, so project description, tell us the story of your project. And I started to talk about this. That's the way Impact 100 frames it, telling us the story. And you get a this year on the Impact form, there is a character limit. You have plenty of characters in this section to really tell the story of your project. You are going to talk about your goals and objectives, detail your methods, and then detail your plan of action. It will clearly explain the who, what, where, when, what, where, when, and how of your project, including who's going to do the work, who's going to staff, where it's going to happen, when it's going to happen, and what will happen. So also talk about whether or not this issue is currently being addressed in the community, whether by you or someone else. If it's someone else, or you for that matter, how will your solution be different, so that how's it different than what's been tried in the past? If you have any collaborations or partnerships, this is a good time to emphasize this. In general, funders like it when organizations work together in collective and innovative ways, rather than duplicating efforts. it's just a positive all the way around. Impact 100 asks specific questions about whether you're collaborating or whether you have some sort of a partnership. So be prepared for that. Also, if you think your project is replicable and can be a model for other organizations, whether it's locally or nationally, include that information, because that will help demonstrate that funding your project will have a more long-lasting and wider range impact. So we will talk a little bit about goals and objectives. It's not really my favorite topic, but I guess we need to address goals and objectives. People and even funders use the terms a little bit differently. For our purposes, we'll say that goals are broad, general statements of what you plan to accomplish. Objectives they flow from the goals, and they're specific and measurable within a realistic time frame, and outcomes are the results or achievements of your objectives. So I'm guessing that almost all of you have heard of the SMART acronym, but I couldn't do a proposal writing presentation without including information about SMART. The SMART is the acronym that describes objectives, which mean that your objectives should be specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound. And we'll go to the next slide. Okay, so SMART objectives. Keep in mind as you're developing your outcome, you always keep SMART, the SMART acronym, in mind. And I'm just going to go through a brief description of each thing. And it was taken, the information that I have is directly from the Center of Nonprofit Excellence in Fort Lauderdale. And I don't think, well, in fact, I know that the organization isn't around anymore. So I got this a long time ago, but it's just as relevant today. So specific is what exactly are we going to do for whom? Tells us what will change for whom in concrete terms. It identifies the population or setting and specific action that will result. In some cases, it's appropriate to indicate how the change will be implemented, for example, through training. Verbs, how you write your proposal. Good verbs when you're talking about objectives are things like provide, train, publish, increase, decrease, schedule, purchase. They indicate clearly what will be done. And then verbs like partner, support, facilitate, and enhance are not that great because they're not specific enough. In terms of being measurable, is it quantifiable and can we measure it? There are some things that are quantifiable and we don't have the capacity as an organization to measure. So that being measurable implies that the ability to count or otherwise quantify an activity or its results. It also means that the source of the mechanism for collecting measurement data is identified, and the collection of this data is feasible for your program. So you'll need to have a baseline measurement if you want to document change. For example, it should be to measure percentage increase or decrease. You will have to know where the starting point is. And if you don't know what the starting point is, for example, if you're doing a swimming program and you don't know how many of the participants are starting out as non-swimmers, you will include that in your proposal and say baseline to be determined by a certain date. Is your what you're proposing attainable, or are your objectives attainable or achievable? Can you get it done in the proposed time frame with the resources and support that you have? So you have to have available resources that are appropriately limited in scope and within the program's control. Okay. Relevant. Will the objective have an effect on the desired goal or strategy? Time bound, that's probably the easiest one. When will this objective be accomplished? So it should be specified and reasonable. The impact grants are 2 years. You'll have 2 years. So can you achieve what you want to achieve in that amount of time? And we'll go to the next slide and just kind of is an example. And I believe that this presentation is going to be available on the Impact 100 website. So you can go back and take a look at this later. I think I'm running a little bit long. So we'll jump into evaluation. Of course, you're proposing a project that you think is achievable and you expect to succeed, or you wouldn't be applying for an impact grant. How you plan to evaluate your project is something that you're going to have to demonstrate in the grant proposal. It's going to show the funder and you whether or not you've achieved your goals and objectives, and will help you measure your success. So there are a lot of different types of evaluation techniques, and they depend upon a number of different factors. So here's just a couple of things to keep in mind. As mentioned, we talked about goals and objectives. So keep in mind, you have to start by specifying your program objectives in measurable forms. And once you've done that, you can identify key indicators of success based upon those goals and objectives. Some things are definitely easier to measure than others. So if you are talking about a food bank and how many people you serve, that's a pretty easy thing to measure. If you're talking about a mentoring program for teenage girls, that's going to be a lot more difficult. So say you want to raise self-esteem in teenage girls. How would you go about doing that? And we'll throw that out to the audience. And also, I don't know if there are any questions at this point, but if there are, this would be a good time.
I haven't seen any questions on the chat. Does anybody have any?
I think with what you're saying in regards to evaluation, is this also another section where we would talk about symptoms, something like maybe objective measures, like if we're working on teens' self-esteem, we would want to lower their Hudson Index of Self-Esteem score, but would we also tell personal stories of youth we've helped?
I don't know that you would tell personal stories as much. You always want to try to quantify as much as you can. So you might want to, and working with the school district is very difficult if you don't already have a partnership. And I'm saying that from Palm Beach County, the Palm Beach County perspective, which is where most of my experience is, and I can't speak to Indian River County, but some things that you might look for are absence rates, a decrease in absence rates, a decrease in detentions, tardiness, whether or not test scores have been raised, and then you'd have to show the relationship too between self-esteem and test scores. So those are all quantifiable. In terms of qualitative, that would be more stories. You could use stories and anecdotes. You could use quotes from teachers, quotes from students' own journals, and surveys. Survey the kids, and they may not be as forthcoming as you want. But when they start the program, answering certain questions, and there are tools out there to help you specific to teens and self-esteem. But do a pre-survey and a post-survey. Their involvement in student activities. Again, a lot of the things will be difficult to get if you are trying because of privacy laws, but there are ways of measuring success without getting into the school district. So the other thing is, and I'm kind of jumping off of that, is don't ignore, like we talk about quantitative and qualitative, don't ignore process, evaluating process and also product. So if you are creating some new method, I don't know what it would be because I've never managed a teen self-esteem project, but if you are coming up with a new method of raising self-esteem, then you will document that along the way. You'll have that at the end, and you may create a handbook. I think a lot of people on this workshop or on the program are more social service related. So if you I don't know why I even said that, but say you have a program to a new innovative program. I'm drawing a blank on what kind of example I would use, but if you have a new innovative program, document everything that you've done, all those steps. And if it's never been done before, then create a handbook that you can then share with other organizations. I mean, that's an important tool. Once you've defined what you're going to measure, you will come up with methods on collecting data and on data analysis and develop a timeline. Finally, when you are creating your evaluation methods and you're talking about outcomes, don't overpromise. So when I read a grant proposal that says within 6 months, 100% of students in our after-school program will be reading at 2 grade levels higher, I just kind of go, oh, man, that's not going to happen. I mean, it's not going to happen because, first of all, kids don't always stay in programs. Kids move out of town. Some kids will, their reading level will increase 2 grade levels. Some kids will not. Some kids have learning disabilities that will prevent them, or they just don't have the interest. So, it's very rare that you're going to achieve 100% of what you started out with. The other thing is, well, I know I'm running way long, so I apologize. I worked as an impact grant reviewer. We received a grant proposal from an organization that was interested in serving underserved populations that wanted to go to college. It was like a college preparation program for kids who would probably be first-generation college students. And one of the things that they put that they were going to achieve was 100% aspirational academic goals. And it was longer than that. I mean, it was more specific than that, but not much more. And I thought, what if you aspired to go to Harvard? I mean, I probably would have liked to have gone to an Ivy League school. Doesn't mean it was going to happen. So anyway, just be realistic. Any questions? Any more questions about that? Okay, I think we'll move on to sustainability.
And Liz, you have until, this was scheduled till 10:30, so.
Oh, okay, all right. Okay, so sustainability is probably my least favorite question on a grant proposal, and also as a grant reviewer. So funders tend to think in the long term, including Impact 100. And so before funding your project, they are going to be concerned on how you're going to sustain it, how you're going to sustain it after the grant period ends. No one wants to fund you forever. Well, maybe we would like to fund you forever if we could, but your nonprofit can't exist on grant support alone. So you need to think through how your organization is going to fund a project, or the organization as a whole, in the long run. What's your business plan? How are you going to support the project if grant funding is not available? So the tip, and this is just common sense, look for diverse streams of income so that you're not relying on one particular source. You're going to be asked to demonstrate how you plan to sustain your proposed project outcomes and funding after the 2-year funding period. So you can do that by showing an income stream over time, or outlining plans that show the creation of funds. So for example, fundraising. Okay, you can talk about your plans to raise funds. You may have a commitment. If you're very lucky, you may have a commitment from another funder already saying, if you guys get this going, we will fund it. You may have a commitment from your board members or from individuals, again, who say, this is a great program, let's get it going, and then I'll be here if you need me. Wouldn't that be nice if that happened all the time? You may be able to fold it into your existing budget. The startup costs may be the expensive part, and maybe the ongoing costs aren't so expensive. So if you are including fundraising in that sustainability answer, as a source of revenue, be prepared to outline your efforts and make sure that if you're stating that you have funding in place, that you really do have funding in place and that you're not just applying for grant funding. Maybe that you are only applying for grant funding, then you're going to put that in that question too and say that we have a big effort to raise grants and that you've identified some foundations who may be willing to fund. That's always a hard question though. Okay, we'll move on to rating tips, which will seem very elementary to all of you, I'm sure, but I believe that it's worth going over. So begin with an outline. When I was, I think maybe in 3rd grade and wrote one of my first reports, the first homework assignment was to go home and create an outline. And it may be one of the last outlines that I did until I started writing grant proposals because it seemed like a waste of time. It's not a waste of time. Begin with an outline. Name your project. I would suggest that you try to choose a name that is memorable. So instead of, let's see, Tri-County Humane Society in Boca Raton was awarded an Impact 100 grant this year. Instead of naming their project, pet adoption service, they named it Forever Friends, F-U-R, Forever Friends. And I remembered it. So I would say try to find something that's catchy, but also definitely related and kind of explains what your program is. Keep your language clear and simple. Avoid jargon and acronyms. This one's really important, particularly because your grant proposal that you're submitting to Impact 100 is being read by Impact 100 members who are trained, but they are trained volunteers and they're probably not, they probably don't come from the same world, professional world that you do. So if I was submitting a library related proposal, I, as a librarian, know what CIRSE is, what ACRL is, different acronyms, but the reader would have no idea. So try, if you have to use acronyms, at least the first time you use them, spell it out. Support your statements and don't rely on opinions. Give yourself time to revise and edit, and revise and edit, and revise and edit. And you have, in this case, till November 3rd, so you've got plenty of time. Let someone else read it. And so we talked way back when we were talking about the team you were going to assemble. I mentioned that when you're at the writing stage, you want reviewers. It's so important to have somebody in your organization, particularly the program people who are going to be involved, read it, have your finance people take a look at it and read it. And then I would suggest that you have someone, at least one person, totally unrelated to the organization, to your program, have them read it. So when I was writing proposals and I still had a teenager at home many years ago, if my son wanted to borrow the car or do something, I would say, oh, sure, you can do it, but you have to read this grant proposal first. And the best feedback came from him, because he would come back and say, I don't think this is going to work because blah, 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 or I don't understand this statement, or I don't understand, these facts, these figures don't add up. And so seriously, just give it to a stranger to read. When you submit your program, I've been involved with another foundation as a grant reviewer, and when they got proposals, they would print them out, and then the proposals would go into piles. Okay, so good project, well written; good project, poorly written; unclear project, well written; and unclear project, poorly written. So you don't want to have those. You don't want to have a good project that's poorly written, because you may not make the cut. So anyway, just some writing tips. We'll go to the next slide. Okay, remember the funder and their priorities. So back in the planning stage, use the meetings that you have with your grant team. Discuss why your project is high income. Why does it create transformative change? And that is the key to an Impact 100 grant. Remember that Impact 100 Indian River County is made up of a group of women, okay, it's collective giving. So they collectively impact the lives of individuals through transformational giving. So when you fill out that form and submittable, you're going to be asked some unique questions that may not be on other proposals as to why your project is high impact and transformational. And this is right from the proposal. Specifically, you're going to be asked what makes this a high impact grant? Does the initiative have high impact and incrementally move the organization towards transformative change for both the target population and the community at large? Okay, and it goes on and explains how you can demonstrate that. Clearly defined problem with data, a visionary, daring, or risky approach to solving a problem, which has a reasonable chance of success, a project which affects many people in a meaningful way, a project which targets a small number of people yet has broad implications for the wider community, and then has concrete and measurable outcomes. So you may have a project that is going to serve 500 people. You may have a project that's going to serve 50 people or 20 people. Both can be impactful and transformative. But if you're the one with the 20 people, then you may need a little bit more of an explanation. Well, in either case, you're just going to need to explain. It's probably the number one question that we used to get with Impact 100 Palm Beach County was how to explain, like, what is a transformative grant? So that's for you to answer. And right from the application, it says your goal here is to answer the so what question. If this project is funded, how will life be better and for whom? And why should this particular funder care? And so anyway, we'll move on to project budget. Okay, so your project budget is one of the first things along with the executive summary or the project summary that a funder generally looks at, and it should be an estimate of the true cost of the project. It's an estimate, so true costs may not end up being true costs, and in which case you will be in constant communication with the funder. So anyway, your project narrative or your proposal is going to explain the project in narrative form. The budget's going to explain your project in financial terms. If your cost exceeds $100,000, which is the amount of the impact grant, you're going to be asked to identify additional funding sources and when you're going to receive those funds. Grant makers will want, all grant makers pretty much will want to see a one-page summary of your projections and will break down your project expenses. Format for individual grant makers may be different, but pretty much they all want the same information. So Impact 100 has a simple budget form as part of the online application, and you're looking at it. It's very difficult to see, I know, because it's so tiny, but it's pretty standard. And if you have completed an impact application before, I don't believe that it's changed a whole lot. So it basically starts out with income, your support, and revenue. On this particular form that you're looking at, if you've got your binoculars or your glasses on, there are line items for the impact grant, and that's already filled in. The amount is $100,000, and other revenue. So other funding, and other funding might consist of other grants and contributions. And again, this is project specific. So if you're getting another grant for this specific project, you'll want to include that contribution. It might come from a corporation, independent foundation, might be local grants, state grants. These, again, only confirmed grants, not pending. If you are receiving individual donations, say you have a board member who has committed $20,000, you would include that. Any individual donations don't need to be, specified, like, you don't need to break it down by individual. You could just put individual donations.
Liz, just real quick, I wanted to address
Sure.
what you said, only confirmed grants. I believe we do consider, so the funding season in Indian River County, they're all applying for grants from different funders at the same time. So they
Okay.
might not necessarily know if funding is coming in from those other funders at the point which they submit this grant.
Okay.
So oftentimes the other funding is not confirmed and it's projected. And so then during the grant process, during the grant season, we will receive and communicate very closely on whether or not that funding is coming through, whether it's been granted or not granted. And that does affect then the evaluation process and the evaluation of the grant. So I just want everybody to be aware of that. You can include other funding that's not confirmed, but understand that if it's not confirmed, that's going to be a closely watched issue.
Okay, great. Okay, so also under that other funding, you could include any earned income that you have. So if you if you have fees that you collect for services that you provide, and again, only things that will be directly allocated to this project. And then in-kind support would also be included in this other funding. After this, there's only one line for that, as you can see, but there is a budget narrative section. So anything that needs to be explained, for example, other funding, if you're putting in $50,000, there's a section here for details remarks. That may not be enough space for that. So you could use that budget narrative space below the form to include information about where that money's coming from. So it might be in-kind support as well, gifts that are not necessarily monetary in nature. So when we talk about in-kind gifts, we generally think about things like goods that are donated or equipment, but it could be pro bono services. It could be space. If you are running a dance program and you don't have a place to run it, maybe you're getting $30,000 a year worth of space, what they would have collected in rent. You need to include that on your budget. And then as an expense down below, you would need to include that because something could happen and you might not be able to get that space for free. So it has to be reflected in the budget. They definitely should balance each other out. The other thing is about pro bono services and volunteers. I would say in terms of volunteer hours, I would not include that in the grant budget unless the person who is the volunteer is providing a service that is a necessity for the program to go forward, in which case I wouldn't even necessarily consider it as a volunteer. I would consider it like a pro bono professional service. So down below there is a spot for professional services. So if I'm a swim instructor, I'm the one running the program, but I'm offering my services for free, you would calculate what those services are actually worth and then put that in other funding. So I hope that makes sense to everybody. Just for a fun fact regarding volunteers, I don't know if you're all familiar with the website independentsector.org, but Independent Sector calculates the value of a volunteer hour nationwide every year. And so for this year, the current value of a volunteer in the state of Florida is $26.32 an hour. So if you are a volunteer, pat yourself on the back. How to use that information, I would not put it in a grant proposal, but if you have a lot of volunteers and you are reaching out, you're doing a board report or a fundraising appeal, or putting it on your website, it's just kind of a nice thing, and often the amount of money is very impressive because it can be staggering if you rely on volunteers. Anyway, project costs are direct costs that are specifically related to this particular project. Okay, so these are expenses for this project only, and they are going to include personnel and non-personnel costs. In this worksheet, the impact worksheet, costs are separated into project capital and direct project operating costs. So capital expenses would include land, building purchase, remodeling, that type of thing. Although, let's see, is there a remodeling? No. Okay, so anyway.
There is, Liz. It's under.
Yeah, I'm looking at this form. It's so tight. Direct project operating costs in terms of personnel are staff directly related to the project. Okay, so if your executive director, even though the executive director is may not be directly involved with running the program, they will be because they're the executive director over everything. Figure out what amount of time is being spent on this particular project. How much time is that executive director using for this project? So if it's 10%, and they're making, an executive director might be making, I don't know, $80,000 a year, you would include $8,000 in salary and attribute that to this grant proposal. If you have a program director that is 100% maybe being hired for this project and they're getting paid $50,000 a year, then you would include that $50,000. You can, let's see, let me look at this form again. So under personnel, salary and wages, and then you also have benefits. So if you are an organization that offers benefits, you can calculate the benefit rate. Whoever's doing your payroll or your financial person can probably already has that number and add that. I'm just going to jump back to those capital expenses. Things have changed dramatically, as most of you know, in terms of costs. So how are you going to calculate the project costs? If your project is something that you're already doing and you're expanding upon, you might think you have a good idea of project costs in terms of capital expenses. I would say it's time to go out and get some new estimates. If it's a new project, you definitely will get estimates. So go out and research 3 estimates. You can I would contact local companies that provide whatever you need and collect and document each quote. So you're gonna have a record. Again, put that in your grant file that's shared. Choose the estimate that is most reasonable and appropriate for your project. It doesn't always mean that that's going to be the lowest one. It may just mean the one that's going to make the most sense. Maybe something that can be delivered in a more timely manner. Just keep in mind that all of your estimates should be reasonable, complete, and realistic. Your finance person is going to probably be the one who's drafting the budget with you or with the program person. Make sure that they are involved. And I also didn't mention any IT staff is being involved. If you are going to have a need for IT for putting something on your website or creating a new website, make sure they're aware of it. Keep in mind that your budget should be a mirror reflection of your proposal. So I have read proposals before that mention certain staff members, and then when you get to the budget portion of it, there's no mention of any salaries for those staff members. Everything that you have put in your proposal should be represented in the budget. Okay. In terms of going back to personnel costs, we talked about salary and wages, benefits and payroll taxes. Any training that's going to be necessary needs to be included. Professional services, these are for people who are not on your payroll and not getting benefits, but who may be working for you on a contract basis. Materials and supplies, any permits and licensing that you need, rent, insurance. And again, all of these things are for this specific project. So if you have rent that you need to pay and you're using your existing building, you cannot put the whole rent amount that you're paying in there. You just the percentage of what you're using for this particular project. Anybody have any questions about that? Okay, I think we'll move on to extras. We are almost out of time. So extras, basically, these are things that a grant maker will probably ask for, and I won't read through the list because we need to move on, but you can see that a lot of these are things that you probably can put in your file right now. Your IRS letter of determination, audited financial statements. If you have audited financial statements, it's expensive to have an audited financial statement. So Impact 100 does not require it, but if you don't have one, they do require some additional documentation. All the information is in submittable. Make sure that you include everything that's requested. And if you don't have something available, contact them and see if there's something else that can be substituted. So don't just leave it out. And again, keep them all handy and you've got plenty of time. So key points to remember are know your project thoroughly, estimate all your direct costs, and estimate your possible income, and you're good to go. So next slide. Okay, so once you've submitted your proposal and Mary Ellen went through the process, you've done everything that you can do, and now you just have to kind of sit and wait, and it's probably the most difficult part of the whole process. Your proposal will go to a panel of readers and a site visit will be scheduled. So I do have site visits can be really exciting. They can also be very scary, but it is crucial to the grant process because I can't tell you how many people have, from Impact in Palm Beach County anyway, go on a site visit and come back and they're just completely wowed, or they come back and say, you know, the proposal was pretty good, but the site visit just, you know, made me a little nervous. So keys to a successful site visit, here are just some tips of mine. Don't go it alone. I've been on a site visit when only one person was there, and we all kind of left saying, you know, where's the support there? Where's the rest of the team? Choose your participants carefully. So who on your staff, board members, constituents, volunteers, who's going to represent your organization the best? And choose a few. You don't want to have 40 people there. You just want people who are there to answer the questions. You want somebody who can answer questions about the budget. So you want a financial person there, and ask the foundation, ask Impact 100 if there's anything that you can do to prepare. That will help you decide who will be there, and find out how long the site visits last. They generally last about an hour to an hour and a half in my experience. Find a quiet place, and then if possible, offer a tour if you can actually bring people through and see the program, if it's an existing program in action. If it's not, what else are you doing? What's your organization doing right now? And you may not be able to do that because of privacy issues, may be slightly disruptive. Generally, if you are going to do it, just let your staff know that you're going to do it, but it's a great way to highlight what you're doing. And if you need to do a mock site visit, go ahead and do that. And if there are any questions that the funder asks that you can't answer during the site visit, that's fine, that's no problem, but just let them know that you will get the answer and get back to them as soon as you can and do it. And then finally, make sure that you thank them. So, and then we can go to the next slide, and let's see. After the proposal, if you're not funded, find out why. You can get some really great feedback. Generally, there are 3 reasons, I mean, in general, as to why you might not be funded. One is that you didn't follow application guidelines. They're right there, so I'm sure none of you will have that problem. The request falls outside of a funder's giving area, giving interests. In the case of Impact, the giving interests are pretty broad. I mean, so that's probably not going to be an issue. And then finally, there just aren't enough funds to fund every great proposal. And that's the hard part. So if you know anybody that wants to join Impact, that would be great. We encourage members. And then I guess to sum things up, we will start, let's see. Yeah, definitely ask for feedback though. And we'll go to the next slide and we're just about done. So remember, do an outline, tell a compelling story, keep your language clear, follow the guidelines, revise and edit again, revise and edit again. And so is there anybody who did not learn anything today? Because if you didn't, I want to know, because I have a little historical fact that has nothing to do with grants. Okay.
Give us the fact, because nobody's raising their hands, which means.
Okay, well, that's a good thing. That's a good thing. Well, today in history, in 1846, the US-Canadian border was established between Great Britain and the US. Treaty was signed. James Polk was the president. So now you know.
That's a good historical fact, and we'll take it with us to the cocktail party. If
All
we
right. Does anybody have any questions?
I see a couple of questions. I see 3 of them. And let's see. We have, thank you. Thank you much for this excellent presentation.
Okay.
And this has been very helpful. So
Good.
those are really nice comments to hear.
Great. Well, good luck to everybody. I look forward to hopefully reading some of your proposals.
I've neglected, and thank you very much for your time and effort, Liz. This was really great.
You're welcome.
I neglected to mention one very important date, and that is the nonprofit information section, which will be in September on the 8th. With any luck, it will be in person. I went to my bank yesterday, Northern Trust, and the doors are open. So that means that possibly their room will be available. I am going to go over there and ask the person that we deal with if that's the case, and reserve the room.
And the library is now fully open.
That's
the library.
We have a room. I do have a room that would be big enough for the NPIS, but okay, it looks like we might have. Thank you. I get stuff.
And
Okay.
in the meantime, do you want me to go to get into the online application and how to access that?
I would love to. That would be great.
Okay, perfect. I just want to cover that before everybody starts leaving. Okay, so to access the online application, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Access the online application, you're going to go to www.impact100ir.com. You are going to then visit our grants page. There's a link here, grant guidelines. As of today, it will be updated to say grant guidelines in application. That will take you to a form. It's just an entry form. We want to know first and last name and the nonprofit name, and then your intent on applying as it stands now. Of course, that's going to change over time. Realize that. And then if you have any interest in a visioning session, just type your contact information here, and a note will be sent to Suzanne Conway, who's our visioning chair, and she can get that information for you. I'm just going to quickly fill this out, press submit. Once you press submit, it's going to take you directly to the grant, our submittable website, which is the website that is hosting our guidelines and application. So you're going to see the guidelines. You are going to see the relevant dates, all of the guidelines down here at the bottom of the guidelines, as well as the financial requirements. Down here at the bottom of the guidelines, there are some helpful tips and videos in case you are new to Submittable. If you have never created an account before, you can feel free to review these resources and learn more about using the actual program. If you have any questions about the application, the software, or the content, please contact Mary Ellen McCarthy, and she can assist you with that. If you do not have an active Submittable account, then you will need to click create an account. If you have an active account, you will just sign in. So I'm going to go through and sign in right now with my account. And that's going to the full application. This is helpful right here. Invite collaborators. So if you have, you're going to have many people that will be collaborating with you on the application. And some people might need access to the actual online application, especially if they're uploading documents, such as financial files and those sorts of things, maybe updating the project budget. So please invite them to collaborate by clicking this link. That allows them to create their own account, their own submittable account, and it gives them access to your application. The reason why we want the key people involved in the application and that will be communicating with us on the review to have their own submittable accounts is because when we do our internal review process, we will be communicating with them directly. So say our financial reviewers have specific questions about the project budget. They will want to reach out directly to your financial lead, and they can do that through the software. So if you then go down, at this point, you will see the application is available to you. It's pretty easy. You just fill in the different fields. Their fields that are required are indicated with an asterisk. An important thing to note about the application is that it is dynamic. So what that means is when you answer certain questions, it will lead to other questions. So for instance, this question, is the project point of contact the executive director? If you press yes, then we don't ask for the additional project point of contact. If you press no, another question pops up asking us for project point of contact. So you need to go through the application and explore the answers to the questions in order to find all of the questions. You're not just going to be able to go in here and copy and paste the questions and think that the application is going to be complete. One of the strategies that Liz talked about was narrative, was writing the application in Word and then copying and pasting it into Submittable. That's a good one for especially the narrative questions. But you're going to need to still go through the application in detail well in advance so that you can ensure that you have all of the questions. All of the questions have popped up, if that makes sense. The board roster, this is an example of a fillable table. So you're asked to just type in the answers to these questions and it will save. If you want to expand the view, you can just expand right here. You can unexpand. And then if you go down, again, there's all different types of questions. I'm going to go into the collaboration part. This is important. If you are collaborating with another organization, and there's a specific difference in the guidelines between a collaboration and a partnership. If you're collaborating with another organization, meaning both of you are accepting funds and utilizing funds from the grant, you will be asked to send an additional form to the organization or your collaboration. This must be done. So please do this once you've determined that you have a collaboration. Make sure that you send this form to that organization as soon as is possible, and then keep tabs on that and make sure that they have submitted that form as part of the application. So that's just one area to look for. Again, there are character counts in the application. One thing to note is that you should use Chrome. I'm using Internet Explorer right now, and the software is not perfect with Internet Explorer. So if you can, I would use Chrome or Safari. Both of those browsers work better with Submittable. So that's just a tip. You can see right now the character counts aren't coming up, and that's because I'm using an Internet Explorer, whereas if I pulled up Chrome, you would see those character counts. This is the project budget. This project budget automatically tallies once you put in values here. The application automatically saves every few seconds. So just, know that it's saving in the background. You have the ability to upload files directly to the application. So there are several points in here where we ask for supporting documents, specific documents. This supplemental materials portion is important, and it's new with our online application. So if you have brochures and promotion materials, if you have video testimonials, if you want to link to your website, that all can be, all those things can be uploaded under supplemental materials. And those are very helpful for our reviewers in helping them learn more about your organization, who you are, what you're about in a dynamic way. And they can really help support anything that you have written in the application. So I would highly suggest utilizing this if you can. And then in the financial section, it's really important. This information depends on when your financial year ends or when your year runs from. So earlier in the application, there is a question about what your financial year is. Depending on your answer to that, there will be questions popping up down here requesting specific documents. So just pay attention to that those questions will pop up down here. And they are specific to your individual financial years. Once you have, you can save the draft of the application so you can go back and look at it any time. And then when you're ready to submit, you can submit. Now, say you submit on accident, you do have the ability to then go in and recall the application. So even if you submit it and you didn't mean to, just send us a quick email. We can recall the application and get it back to you for additional edits. We cannot see any application that has not been submitted, so we won't be able to look at the application or anything like that until it's formally submitted. And then once it's formally submitted, we'll be able to communicate with you directly through the submittable account if we have any questions, comments, if we want to request additional documents and that sort of thing. Does anybody have any questions about this? One important thing to note is once you have created your initial submittable account, you no longer need to access the application through our website. And so you won't have to keep going back to the website to fill out those forms. Just go to submittable.com and log into your account, and you'll have access to the application right there. Last year, we had a lot of people that kept accessing through our website, and then it just meant that they had to keep filling out that form over and over. And that's not necessary. You don't need to do that. I'm just going to look at this chat. Yes, the application can be printed prior to submittal. Yes. So when you go into when you create your submittable account and you access the application or you save the application, there's an option to download that you have and print it out. Certainly. And any other questions?
Let's see. We have a few people that had to leave. Can the application be printed prior to submittal?
Oh, I just answered that question.
I thought so.
And again, if you have any questions on how to use submittable, please reach out to us. We do not want you to struggle. We helped people throughout the whole process last time. New technology can always be tricky. It can be tricky when you're trying to learn it. It is a pretty easy and intuitive platform, but if you encounter any issues at all, just reach out directly and we're here to help.
And I wanted to introduce Suzanne Conway. She is our visioning chair as of this year, and she is the point person for questions, any advice on direction of where you're going with your application process. So Suzanne, she wasn't able to join us until a little into the beginning of the presentation. So I just wanted to introduce you. Go ahead if you wanted to say a word or two, Suzanne.
Yes, thank you, Mary Ellen. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, I just would like to really encourage you all to schedule a visioning session with our team, our committee. Generally, it's approximately an hour, and your grant writer, your executive director, anybody else on your board or in your organization can attend. In the meeting, we listen to your ideas for the grant. You might not be ready to do a grant this year, but we could help you flesh out the ideas and possibly tell you of any suggestions or concerns about the direction you're heading. And just as an aside, all of our finalists last year did have a visioning session with us. That's it. Thanks.
That's great. Thank you, Suzanne. Well, again, Liz, I thank you so much for your presentation. Dee, I thank you for all the support that you made it possible for us to have this not in-person session that we were hoping we could have at the United Way's office. And again, we're working towards making that change as the evolution of the vaccinated public becomes better and better. But thank you for joining us, everyone.
Thank you.
I look forward to seeing some great projects.